Have you ever noticed how the loudest critics of government corruption often get dismissed as conspiracy theorists, right up until the moment the math proves them right? We hear political slogans, we watch the endless partisan theater on the news, but strip all of that away, and you are left with a very quiet, very lucrative business model. We are talking about the monetization of state secrets. And here is the uncomfortable truth we have to unpack today. When it comes to the intelligence community and the political establishment profiting off classified access, the whole narrative about the swamp being a self-serving ecosystem was actually spot on.
Spot on, and honestly, maybe even a little understated. When people hear that term, they usually picture traditional lobbying. You know, a politician retiring and going to work for a pharmaceutical company to push a specific bill. But what we are looking at now is an entirely different beast. It is the intelligence industrial complex. We are talking about individuals who spend their careers in the alphabet agencies, holding the highest security clearances on the planet, and then stepping through a revolving door into private consulting firms, defense contractors, or tech giants. They are not selling their policy expertise, they are selling their access to the shadows.
That is a fascinating distinction. Selling access to the shadows rather than just knowing how a bill becomes a law. It almost feels like a toll booth has been set up on the highway of national security. You have these former officials sitting on corporate boards, pulling in seven-figure salaries, and the average person has to wonder, what exactly is the product? Because they are not manufacturing microchips. They are not building cars.
The product is the secret itself, or, more accurately, the proximity to the secret. Think of a top-tier security clearance like a platinum credit card, but instead of a credit limit, it gives you a trust limit within the deepest layers of the government. When a high-ranking intelligence official retires, that clearance does not just evaporate. The relationships do not vanish. Private companies pay astronomical sums simply to have that person in the room, because that person knows exactly where the government's blind spots are, what technologies the military is secretly desperate for, and which foreign threats are keeping the current administration awake at night.
So it is essentially legalized insider trading. But instead of trading stocks based on an upcoming corporate earnings report, they are trading corporate strategy based on classified geopolitical risk assessments.
Exactly. And that is where the danger really lies. It is one thing for a former spy chief to write a memoir. It is a completely different reality when that same former official starts an opaque strategic advisory firm that caters to foreign entities, sovereign wealth funds, or massive defense conglomerates. You have to ask yourself, whose interests are they actually serving? Because the profit motive completely warps the concept of national security. If your post-government wealth depends on global instability, or at least the perception of it, you have zero financial incentive to actually solve geopolitical problems. Peace is terrible for the consulting business.
Wow, peace is terrible for the consulting business. That is a chilling thought. It makes you look back at all the endless foreign policy debates, the constant drumbeat of emerging threats, and wonder how much of it is genuine caution and how much of it is essentially a sales pitch for a future private sector gig. Are we essentially watching a multi-billion-dollar marketing campaign disguised as foreign policy?
It is hard not to see it that way once you understand the mechanics. Let us use a metaphor. Imagine you hire a security guard for your house. His job is to keep the perimeter safe. But after a few years, he quits, starts a security consulting firm, and immediately signs a massive contract with the company that manufactures your locks, while simultaneously advising your neighborhood association on why they need to buy more expensive alarm systems. He uses the exact vulnerabilities he learned while guarding your house to sell products back to you. That is the intelligence revolving door. The taxpayer funds the gathering of the secrets, but the private sector harvests the profits from them.
And the barriers to entry are insurmountable for anyone else. You cannot just decide to start an intelligence consulting firm out of your garage. You need that golden ticket, the top secret clearance, and the institutional pedigree. It creates an ultimate monopoly. A closed loop, where the same 50 or 100 people just cycle between government appointments, cable news contributor slots, and private equity boards, which brings me to the political side of this. When that specific critique was raised that this establishment is a self-enriching club, the pushback was fierce. The establishment defended itself by claiming to be the absolute guardians of democracy.
Oh, the pushback was monumental, because pointing out this dynamic threatens a very comfortable, very quiet gravy train. The defense is always wrapped in the flag. They say, "We are patriots. We dedicated our lives to public service," and many of them did. That is the tragic irony here. You can start out as a genuinely dedicated public servant, but the system is designed to eventually turn you into a commodity. When the going rate for your Rolodex is $5 million a year, the temptation to cash in is overwhelming. The outrage against the critics wasn't just political disagreement. It was the immune system of a highly profitable business model attacking a threat to its revenue stream.
That explains the absolute venom we saw. It wasn't just a debate over policy, it was a defense of a business model. But let us dig deeper into the actual mechanics of how these secrets are monetized. I want to understand the day-to-day. How does an abstract government secret turn into a tangible deposit in a private bank account? Are they literally handing over classified documents? Because that would be treason.
No, they are far too sophisticated for that. It is never a crude exchange of a manila folder in a parking garage. It is all about strategic steering. Let us say a private tech company wants to win a massive cloud computing contract with the Pentagon. They hire a former intelligence director. That director does not hand them classified specs. Instead, they say, "I know the current director of the agency. I know he is deeply concerned about quantum decryption from rival nations." If you frame your entire pitch around quantum resistance, you will win the contract. That advice is completely legal, but it relies entirely on privileged, non-public knowledge of the government's internal panic. The company wins a $10 billion contract, the former official gets a massive success fee, and the taxpayer foots the bill.
It is the ultimate arbitrage. They are trading on the spread between what the public knows and what the classified state knows. And the real victim here seems to be the concept of objective truth. If the people advising our current leaders are implicitly waiting for their turn to cash out, how can we trust any intelligence assessment? How do we know a threat is real, and not just the seed being planted for a future defense contract?
We don't, and that is the philosophical crisis at the heart of this. We have outsourced the architecture of our reality to people who have a financial stake in keeping us terrified. When intelligence becomes a commodity, fear becomes the marketing department. We are seeing the privatization of truth. The government collects the data using extraordinary powers granted by the citizens, but the interpretation of that data is increasingly filtered through the lens of private corporate interests. It completely erodes public trust. When the public realizes that the people warning them about global doom are getting rich off those exact warnings, cynicism becomes the only logical response.
Cynicism, or a demand for a complete structural overhaul. But how do you even begin to dismantle a system where the regulators, the intelligence officers, and the corporate executives are all the exact same people, just wearing different suits on different days of the week? It feels like trying to perform surgery on yourself.
It is incredibly difficult, primarily because the people who write the laws are also hoping to benefit from this exact system when they leave office. Let us think about the broader societal cost here. We are not just losing money. We are losing the fundamental democratic principle of accountability. In a healthy republic, power is supposed to be temporary. You serve, you leave, you go back to being a citizen. But this shadow economy creates a permanent unelected ruling class. They don't need to win elections because they hold the keys to the information kingdom. Whether an administration changes from red to blue or blue to red, the intelligence industrial complex doesn't miss a beat. Their stock portfolios don't care about partisan politics.
So the whole left versus right battle that consumes the public's attention is essentially a distraction? A reality show happening on the main stage, while the real business is being conducted in the VIP lounge behind the curtain?
Precisely. It is professional wrestling. The public is arguing over who gets to sit in the Oval Office, while the same unelected bureaucracy continues to approve the same defense contracts, authorize the same surveillance programs, and cash the same consulting checks. The true bipartisan consensus in Washington isn't about policy. It is about maintaining the profitability of the security state. The rhetoric about draining the swamp struck a nerve precisely because it pointed at the VIP lounge and said, "Look at what they are doing." Regardless of how you feel about the messenger politically, that specific diagnosis of the ecosystem was a direct hit on the hull of the establishment.
Which explains why the system reacted like a hive of bees under attack. You would need draconian cooling-off periods to even begin fixing this. Banning intelligence officials from working for defense contractors or foreign entities for 10 years after leaving office. But as you said, the people who need to pass that law are the ones profiting from the absence of it.
The real change only happens when the public fully understands the scam. When the average citizen stops viewing these former officials as infallible, selfless guardians and starts viewing them as what they often are, highly specialized lobbyists. We have to strip away the mystique of the intelligence community.
Stripping away the mystique. I like that. It is time we stop treating security clearances like a priesthood and start treating them like the massive financial assets they are. Because as long as a secret can be turned into a stock option, the swamp isn't just going to survive, it is going to expand. The monetization of national security might be the most successful, least discussed industry of our time.
Absolutely. And the most dangerous part of any shadow economy is that it thrives entirely on our willingness to look the other way. We are conditioned to believe that national security is too complex, too delicate for the average person to question. But the moment you follow the money, the complexity vanishes. It is just basic greed, dressed up in a tailored suit with a top-secret badge. Until we force that economy into the light, we are just financing our own manipulation.
Financing our own manipulation. That is a heavy but necessary realization to leave our listeners with today. We have to start asking not just what the government knows, but who is getting paid to know it. When the dust settles on all the political theater, the ultimate truth is usually found on a balance sheet. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narrative. Keep looking at who profits from the panic, and we will see you next time.